Genius Kids. Cultivating love for learning.
Lesson 1: History and its sources. Knowledge acquisition. Prehistory. Since pre means before, and history is the record of human events. Prehistory refers to the time before human civilization developed and started writing things down. Scientists often it is a period of time between the appearance of the earliest humans and the development of the art of writing. Prehistoric people did not know how to read and write. They could not record their observations in written. Our knowledge about them is based on unwritten sources. They lived in the caves. Their bones, tools and pottery have been found buried in the ground. All these objects have much to say about the life of prehistoric people. What is history? History is a systematic record of the past events. It is story of the people who lived in past. The written records and many other things of that period enable us to know about the early time. Why is studying history important? Our past helps us to know how early man gradually grappled with all difficulties. To begin with, they did not know how to cook food, but later on they learnt about it. Similarly, there are a number of skills people learned and invented which teach us how we can overcome all difficulties. From the early man, present have learned that we can get rid of any problems by researching and inventing the means of solutions. Today, we think that our life is better than early man, but they taught us to find out the solutions of all problems. We should study history because 1. History helps us to understand people and societies. History gives us information about different societies and behaviors of the people. It highlights on the food and clothes of the people, their beliefs, faiths and their occupations. 2. History helps us to know the changes of life of human beings. The past leads to present and the present leads to future. We try to know why something happened. For example, global recession, wars or political shift. We have to look for factors that took place earlier. Only through studying we can understand how things change. Only through history we can begin to comprehend the factors that cause change. 3. History provides identity. History provides a basic understanding about how the family has interacted with larger historical changes. It makes us aware of the nation's story, focusing on different features of the national experience, which makes us aware of national values. 4. Skills that a student of history develops. Through the study of history, a student builds experience in dealing with and assessing various kinds of evidence. The kinds of evidence historians use in shaping the most accurate pictures of the past that they can. She learns where did the people live and how were they able to protect themselves. Dwellings of early man. Earlier people lived along the banks of river Narmada, see map. They were skilled gatherers, that is people who gathered their food. They collected roots, fruits and other forest foodstuffs for their food. They hunted animals and also began to produce crops such as wheat and barley. People started rearing animals like goat, sheep and cattle as well. The Garo hills in the northeast and the Vindhyas in central India were some of the other areas where agriculture developed. Rice was first grown in the north of the Vindhyas. Look at the river Indus and its tributaries. Tributaries are smaller rivers that flow into a larger river. On the banks of these rivers, about 4,700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished. Then, about 2,500 years ago, cities developed on the banks of the Ganga and its tributaries, and along the sea coasts. Look at the river Ganga and its tributary known as the Sun. In ancient times, the area along these rivers to the south of the Ganga was known as Magad. Its rulers were very powerful and set up a large kingdom. Kingdoms were set up in other parts of the country also. People travel from one part of the subcontinent to another throughout the year. Sometimes, the hills and high mountains including the Himalayas, deserts, rivers and seas made journeys dangerous but possible. In this way, men and women moved in search of livelihood and to escape from natural disasters like droughts or floods. Sometimes men marched in armies, conquering others' lands. Moreover, merchants traveled with caravans or ships, carrying valuable goods from place to place. And religious teachers walked from village to village, town to town, stopping to offer instruction and advice on the way. Finally, some people perhaps traveled driven by a spirit of adventure, wanting to discover new and exciting places. In this way, people shared their ideas. How do we study our past? In our search to know history, we need to look at the records of the past events. These records may be available in the form of written materials or pictures and objects which are called sources. How to count dates? The birth of Jesus Christ, the founder of Christianity, is the date from where we count years. For example, 2010 means 2010 years after the birth of Christ. All dates before the birth of Christ are counted backwards and usually have the letters BC, before Christ, added on. Names of the land. As we know that our country is known by different names, such as Hindustan, India and Bharat. The word India came from the word Indus, which Sanskrit meaning is Sindhu. The Iranians and the Greeks, who came through the northwest, called it the Hindus or the Indus, and the land to the east of the river was called India. In course of time, the country came to be known as India in Greek and Hind in Persian. Later on, the word Hind became Hindustan. The name Bharat or Bharatvarsh was given to the country after the name of an ancient clan, tribe, the Bharathas. Sources of history. We learn about the events of the past from many sources. These are divided into literary and archaeological sources. Literary sources. These include written records from the past. These are important as they tell us about the social, political, and economic conditions of the times when they were composed. Many literary sources were transferred from one person to another orally before they were written down. Archaeological sources. These include monuments, coins, sculptures, paintings, weapons, pottery, ornaments, and all other objects or artifacts which were created in the past. Let us now discuss these sources of history in detail. Literary sources. Literary sources include all written and non-written or oral texts containing information about our past. In ancient times, people had no knowledge of writing paper. So, they used the bark of the birch trees or palm leaves to write books. These texts, called manuscripts, are now preserved in monasteries or libraries. Sacred and secular texts. Literary sources that deal with religious subjects are together called sacred literature. On the other hand, texts that are focused on subjects of social, political, and economic importance and had little link with religion are called secular literature. Indigenous and foreign literature. Literary texts written in the past by people of our country are called indigenous literature. On the other hand, texts written by foreigners who visited India at different points of time and recorded their experience are collectively known as foreign literature. Besides, there are some ancient literary sources whose script we have not been able to understand so far. We are unable to know what they contain. The Harappan script is an example of such a script. Inscriptions. Inscriptions were another important means of recording information during the past. Usually, they are writings found engraved on stone tablets, pillars, metal plates, walls of caves, etc. The inscriptions were written in different languages at different places. The study of inscriptions is called epigraphy. James Prinsep was an official of the Calcutta, Kolkata Mint and secretary of the Asiatic Society of Bengal. He was the first to interpret the Brahmi script and was thus able to read the edicts of Ashoka, which were inscribed in that language. Archaeological sources. Archaeology is the scientific study of the material remains of the past that are discovered through digging or excavations conducted at various historical sites. In the absences of written records, archaeological sources are the one means of understanding the history of the past. Let us take a look at some of these sources. Monuments. Monuments and structures found during excavations at various sites tell us about the conditions of the times during which they were built. Most of these, such as temples, stupas, palaces, and private houses, were erected for religious or social purposes. Coins. Coins give information of the social and economic conditions of a country. Their circulation gives an idea of the economic condition of the period when they were issued. They also tell us about the extent of a particular kingdom and its relations with distant areas. Roman coins discovered in India show that our ancestors interacted with the people of the ancient Rome. The study of coins is known as numismatics. Other objects and artifacts. Archaeological sources also include many other objects and artifacts found during excavations, such as tools used by people in the past, pieces of pottery, sculptures, paintings, ornaments, etc. They tell us more about who created them and when they were made. Archaeologists also study plant remains, animal bones, and food grains buried underground and found at different sites. Do you know? Flavio Biondo, an Italian Renaissance humanist historian, was one of the first historians to use a three-period division of history: ancient, medieval, modern, and is known as one of the first archaeologists. Keywords. Archaeology, the study of remains such as coins, inscriptions, buildings, and monuments. Chronology, the sequence in which the events of past took place. Manuscript, old handwritten documents. Inscriptions, records engraved on pillars, stone walls, and gateways, etc. Epigraphy, the study of written records engraved on stone or copper plates. Let's revise. Continuous review. History is the record of past. The form in which symbols, letters, is depicted called script. Studying relics of the past and signs of digging up is called archaeology. Resources are of two types: archaeological and literary. The study of coins is known as numismatics. The handwritten materials are called manuscripts.
Like, share, and subscribe.